Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. There's a lot to talk about with this one, so let's get started. Legend of Zelda Wind Waker is the perfect example of the difficult transition that Nintendo had from the N64, which was already not as successful as other systems at the time, and the GameCube. A lot of really important games came out for the Nintendo 64, despite the fact that the system didn't sell as much as they would have wanted it to. So it was difficult for their follow-ups on the GameCube to get all that much respect. You saw this between Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine. You saw this between Star Fox 64 and the couple of games that came out on the GameCube for it, the Dinosaur Adventures 1 and the real Star Fox 1. And you especially saw it between Ocarina of Time, which, like I said, was a masterpiece, and Wind Waker. Obviously, Majora's Mask came between the two, but it's kind of a different story altogether. With Wind Waker, you had a solid game, but it wasn't what people were desperately crying out for. People really wanted a realistic, dark, mature Zelda, because they sort of saw a little bit of that with a tech demo for the GameCube, and because they loved Ocarina of Time. So when what they saw was this cutesy, cartoony Zelda, people weren't all that satisfied, and a lot of people couldn't get over the cel-shaded art style. I myself never really had a problem with the art style, so I didn't really have a problem buying and playing the game. The game was good, but it was different. There was a lot of exploration. In fact, sometimes it felt like there was too much exploration and too much sailing sequences. One specific problem I had was a fetch quest near the end of the game, in which you had to pick up certain pieces of the Triforce from the ocean. That's an interesting concept, but you had to search to find the maps that then show the locations of these things. So it's like a double fetch quest with a lot of pieces, and one with a ghost ship that was very tricky to find. A lot of people I know got to that spot in the game, they got sick of it and stopped playing. Eventually they may have picked it up later again and finished it and found a pretty satisfying ending, but that was just a poor choice to put that sequence in the game. It really was not enjoyable. In fact, so unenjoyable that I stopped playing. What I did like about the game was not only did the visuals actually survive fairly well to this time, and it looked good at the time anyway, but the combat system I felt was overhauled and pretty enjoyable. It was fun to dodge around of the enemy's attacks and hit them in the ass with your sword. It was nice to hit the weak spots. It was generally a fun game, and in fact, I think my favorite part had to involve that combat system, because you're walking around through, spoiler alert, sort of what used to be the Kingdom of Hyrule underneath the ocean. You're passing all these frozen enemies, and you just know that you're going to have to fight all those things, even though there's like 20 of them. And these aren't necessarily easy enemies. These are like the big pig guards and the iron knuckles and things like that. So guess what? They do come to life, and you have to defeat all of them in one massive, big brawl that I felt really excited to be fighting, and I just could feel the adrenaline kicking their asses and dodging and almost losing, but eventually surviving and winning the day. That was a good sequence. The end of the game also had some pretty interesting boss battles, including one with Ganondorf that ended in a way that people didn't really expect from a game that was cutesy. And in fact, I think it ended with a sword through Ganondorf's forehead. What's interesting with Wind Waker is how its perception has changed over time. At the time, like I said, it wasn't as much loved as things like Ocarina of Time or Link to the Past. But the next game to come out after that was Twilight Princess, the darker, more mature, more realistic Ocarina of Time-like Legend of Zelda. And I think, after playing that, some people were disappointed and more appreciative of the creative gambles that games like Wind Waker and Majora's Mask took. And I see, in general, more appreciation for the game today. I thought it was a solid game back then. I think it's a solid game today.